Whoever would like to start first, I guess,
Well, do you want to do the meeting, approve the meeting? Okay.
you know.
Passing over those for
So
now.
you're gonna pass all the minutes, and
Oh, okay, you want to do that first?
we got just,
All right, I want to approve the minutes of October 19th and November 9th.
I second that motion, and approve.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I forgot. Okay, now we can do time. We're not going to have any questions until after the consultants have their whole presentation, and we'll take all the questions.
It's not about the Hickory Hills. I just wondered if we had been successful at posting minutes yet.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Oh,
they're on.
They're
they're
on.
on the website? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, now we can have Ty and Bond's resignation.
you guys are up.
Okay, so green means we're live, we're recorded, and then, okay, yeah, so everybody else is muted. So, okay, I'll introduce myself. I'm Tom Mahana. I'm a principal at Ty and Bond, and with me tonight is Lou Sirocco, Senior Project Manager at Ty and Bond. Next to him is Derek Belanger. He's our, what's your new title, Derek?
Senior engineer.
Senior Engineer. Derek just got a promotion. And also on our team is David Howard. He's our hydrogeologist with Geo Insight. So tonight we wanted to meet with the board and discuss what we've done is put together a preliminary scope of services for the pilot study, beginning with the long-term pilot study at Hickory Hills well site. So we just provided, I'm just going to provide a general overview of what the scope of that work will be, and it's between myself, Lou, Derek, and Dave, we can answer any questions, technical questions regarding our approach on the pilot study itself and some of the other work that we'll do as far as trying to monitor potential impacts to the lake. So our approach on this would be also to work with another sub-consultant, Blue Leaf Incorporated. The principal from Blue Leaf is Eric Rotten. We work together with Eric and his firm on a number of pilot studies. So Eric would provide all of the equipment, complete all of the testing services, and do all of the monitoring throughout the duration of the pilot study. And we would coordinate this work with Eric. The initial step would be for us, this pilot study requires approval from DEP. So we would prepare an initial application to DEP, which would outline our approach, sampling protocol, description of the equipment, how this would be tested, and the frequency of testing, and also with a description of the different types of treatment media that will be evaluated as part of this process. So that's kind of the first step. That work would proceed immediately upon authorization. And once we have approval from DEP to proceed with the pilot study, then Eric and his team would then set up their equipment and initiate the pilot study. The pilot study right now, as we've discussed at many meetings in the past, we're estimating that the duration of the study will last about approximately a year. We feel that this would be an appropriate length to obtain all of the important information specifically regarding the PFAS, as far as PFAS removal of the different medias that are going to be evaluated. And I'll let Lou and Derek talk a little bit more about that. Once the pilot study, and then also as part of this, as this pilot study is going on, we'll also engage the services of Dave and Geo Insight to number one, obtain some baseline water level measurements in the lake, and then also do some long-term monitoring of the lake levels during the duration of the pilot study. And I'll let Dave talk a little bit more about what our plan would be to monitor the water levels. And then lastly, once all of this study is completed, our final task under this phase of the project would be to prepare a pilot study report, which will include all of the data, water sample results, and recommendations for full-scale treatment plant. So I just want to just emphasize that this scope of work is only just to complete the pilot study. This is not to do any preliminary design, start laying out a facility. It's specifically just to conduct a long-term water quality testing of the site, specifically for testing for removal, treatment for iron and manganese and PFAS. So with that, maybe I could have Lou and Derek just to talk a little bit about the approach on the pilot equipment, and then ask Dave to talk a little bit about the monitoring.
Sure. The bulk of the piloting equipment will be several columns for treatment of iron and manganese in multiple trains, so that we can get the data we need to collect and show repeatability. And then following the removal of iron and manganese would be the various columns for the different PFAS media that we would then test. So for the duration of the pilot, we'd be removing iron and manganese. However, most of the information we'll need to collect off of the iron and manganese removal process can be done, about a month. After that, it's really just continuing on as a pre-treatment system for the piloting of the PFAS. So as long as we're testing the PFAS media, we need to keep the iron and manganese removal process going. So they'll kind of shift gears once they've completed all the information and gathered all the information they need on the iron and manganese removal process. And then really it's just maintaining that for the year to see how long the different medias last and or perform through the duration of the testing. And once we have all that information at the end, we can crunch some numbers and figure out what's the most economical approach for you to treat going forward. Derek, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing to add would be that the iron and manganese system would likely come in a small mid-sized trailer shipping container that would be placed next to the well building, and then the PFAS columns would likely be built inside of the pump station. It's possible that everything could be installed into the existing pump station. I think the pilot vendor would prefer to have their existing pilot trailer just brought to the site and then put into the adjacent to the building. But I know that was one concern earlier.
Dave, you want to talk a little? I'm sorry. Dave, you want to talk a little bit about the?
Well, I understand there's some concerns that the withdrawal is going to impact the lake level, and I could talk a little bit about that if you'd like, but for the monitoring, we're confident that the withdrawal will not affect the lake level, and to demonstrate that, we will do long-term monitoring. We can install an instrument in the lake that measures the water level electronically. We measure it every 4 hours or whatever interval we think is appropriate, I think 4 hours. And we would also install a gauge that looks like a stadia rod that you can look at and actually measure the water level, and we would measure that manually at some interval as a quality check to the electronic data. And after a whole year, we would get this baseline, and then during operation we would continue to monitor the water level, and we could compare and see whether there's any impact. We are confident that there won't be, and that this would demonstrate.
So we also kind of just have put together an estimated initial schedule for this, assuming we get the authorization to proceed this month, December, which will be soon. We'll get the permit application into DEP some point in January, and would expect that we would have a approval by February to proceed with the work. So in the meantime, we'd be coordinating the work with Blue Leaf, and so that they would be prepared to be able to actually initiate testing in March. And so once that begins, we're planning a year from that point. Then with the final report and submission to DEP would be April, sometime in April, late spring of 2024. So When this phase of the project is completed and we submit the report to DEP, and we subsequently get approval for that, that allows the project then to proceed into the next phase. Should the project continue to move forward, would be to allow, get approval on the concept for the design, and then that approval from DEP to be able to proceed with your design permanent treatment facility. So again, we just, we wanted to put together just a draft scope at this point. I know we have assisted you with putting together the budget that was approved at your recent district meeting. So this scope is reflective of the budget that we provide, that we, assisted the district with. So again, our intent here today was just to provide this, you provide this scope and get some feedback and see if this is, if there's any adjustments in what you would like to see as far as services as part of this phase of the project.
Okay, I got a couple questions. On the iron and manganese removal, what is the goal? Is it 0 iron and manganese, or is it below the maximum contaminant levels? What's the goal for that?
Yeah, iron and manganese are typically regulated with standard secondary maximum contaminant levels. So for iron, it's 0.3, and for manganese, it's 0.05.
Right.
And then, one of the things you're dealing with now too is the Office of Research and Standards guideline of manganese of 0.3. So the intent of the treatment system would be to bring those levels down to half of the secondary maximum contaminant level.
Okay.
So at most, having an effluent of 0.15 iron and 0.02 manganese.
Okay, is it possible to go lower?
Yeah, typically you'll see non-detect samples, but
Okay.
in terms of the variability in field sampling,
Okay.
we usually define a successful pilot as half the secondary maximum contaminant level. And
Okay.
just to clarify that the reason the well was taken offline was due to that high 0.3 Office of Research Standards guideline manganese level. The 0.05 secondary maximum contaminant level, which we'll be treating to half of that, is really just an aesthetics level that doesn't have any actual
Okay.
tie to a health effect.
Okay. So on the access to the pilot study, will the truck access be? Like, how frequent will they be?
Yeah, so for the first couple weeks for setup, there'll be the startup, the piloted contractor will have a trailer, shipping container, drop to the site and install the pilot columns for PFAS and all the necessary hoses. For the first couple weeks, there'll be some, decent amount of visiting of the site to set everything up, get it tested, make sure it's operating as expected. Initially, we'll run a pretty intensive study on the iron and manganese system to get the design criteria numbers we need for the pilot study. So that'll be several weeks, and it'll probably be visited every other day, with weekends, probably Friday and Monday. And then once we've developed enough data from the pilot study to size the iron and manganese system, we would then sort of ratchet it back a little bit and just provide enough pre-treated water for the PFAS study to be maintained. So the PFAS study itself doesn't require a lot of hands-on operator assistance. They would sample that for PFAS maybe once every couple weeks, but they will need to continuously maintain the iron and manganese system that provides pre-treated water, and that's likely several times a week they'll have to visit the site. But after the initial startup of all the equipment being brought, it'll just be one operator and a pickup truck coming to the site, just similar to as if you were normally operating that well.
Okay. Another, more on the water monitoring, is there a way that this could be accessible to outside? We wouldn't let anybody access our SCADA system for trending, which our SCADA system, we trend everything, chemical, pH levels, tank levels. So if we could tie this into our SCADA, or maybe could we, or another method, are you aware of any other way that we can make this accessible for the residents to see if they want to, what the levels were from day to day, or maybe day to day, but after, time period after they were recorded?
I'm sure we can figure that out.
Okay.
Isn't there going to be a mechanical measuring system there also, you mentioned? Can that be put over by the dam somewhere, so anybody, any of the residents down there can just go over and look at it instead of...
We could put it anywhere. We can have more than one.
Yeah, I think that would probably be an easier
So,
method.
yeah, so he mentioned a visual one, we actually go and log it. Would that be something that we would do, or the part of the, well, the pilot study guy wouldn't be going down there every day, which we could go every day. So would we just log it manually?
The visual or the manual measurements would just be for quality control from the electronic, so
Okay.
however often you feel comfortable. If the pilot, how often is the guy running the pilot going to be out there? A couple times a week. I mean, I think that would be sufficient.
Okay.
If you wanted to do it every day,
Okay, well, and if we did it on occasion, and some of the other residents did it on
if
occasion.
a
we could-
resident wanted to do it, that would be fine too.
So that would, if, that would make people more
It
comfortable.
would just,
confirm.
right, it's just to confirm that the instrument is in calibration.
Okay, so during the pilot study, could this be tied into SCADA, or is this something that would be more of a permanent, the electronic logger?
Or would it be possible to, I don't know, once every 2 weeks or something, post that data? You know what I'm saying, update it, like a
Yep.
email type of thing, like this is the latest report. I don't know how frequent that would need to be done, but something to that effect versus a live type of.
Depends how much you want to spend.
We don't want to pay anything.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can post the data. I know, we talked about it internally, and, the data that we're gonna get from the transducer, Dave would wanna, before we go posting anything, and showing like trends, that you would need to just review the data, and then we could post, we could provide updated graphs, trending graphs that could be posted on your website. The tying into SCADA can be done. I'm just trying to think from a programming standpoint, how that would have to, how we would do that. It's not a 4 to 20 signal.
It could be.
It could be? Okay.
I mean, they're different, I was thinking of a standalone unit that would
Right.
just record and save the
You
data,
did download the data.
and I would either have to visit it to get the data out of, or a more sophisticated instrument could transmit
Would be a
it.
pressure transducer, yeah,
Right.
we could do that.
And, but if you want to directly wire it to the SCADA system, then you don't have to visit the site, you don't need to transmit it, it's just all right there. You're not going to run a conduit out.
Right, right, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But we do have a transducer in the well, so that wouldn't really represent what the lake level is. Or maybe it would, I'm not sure. But I mean, we can show what the water level is in the well during the pumping stage. I don't know if that would fluctuate if the lake levels did lower, like the lake level's low now. I'm sure you would see that in the pumping level, so you would see probably minor changes, but not enough.
A little bit.
That would see that, but could we tie in, because there is an observation? No, that wouldn't work either, never mind.
But it's the same instrument, instead of being in the well, it's in the lake.
All right.
Yeah, and it would be in a stilling well, right?
Right.
How far off the shore?
Just deep enough so that it doesn't, it stays wet with the natural fluctuation. You'd want to keep it from freezing.
Right.
Depends on the instrument. Some can survive freezing, some can't.
Okay, only other question I guess is funding. You mentioned that when this pilot study's completed, it goes to DEP for approval. At what point do we go for the funding, for the state revolving fund, low interest? Would that be after DEP's approval, or could it be done once the method is?
You could be doing it concurrently, so that's an annual, that is an annual process, so the SRF applications are due in August of every year. So next August, we should be fairly far along in the process, that we would be able to decide whether we feel comfortable submitting an application, if we know enough to be able to submit the application.
Okay.
And that's all that is. It's just an application for funding, and then you would typically find out if you make the funding list the following. Well, like for example, this past round was submitted in August, and we expect to hear at sometime early 2023. So if we were to submit next summer, we would find out sometime early 2024 whether you make the funding list. And then if you're successful to make the funding list, then kind of the clock starts as to when you then would have to vote your construction funding, and then we would have to submit the the loan application along with the design of the facility, which would be that typically it's like mid-October of that year. So you, on an accelerated schedule, you could be potentially October of 2024 submitting a loan application and design. That would be the earliest you would potentially be able to submit something if you go through the SRF process.
Okay, which I assume we would, because that's when we would
Because you're
get
talking about a project of significant costs, and currently and I'm assuming that this would continue, that there would be the opportunity for principal forgiveness on the loan because of the PFAS treatment aspect of the project.
Okay.
But so just so everybody's clear, that SRF process, it's an annual process, so that if we don't feel next summer we're in a position to be able to submit, because we just don't feel we're far enough along, and we're not really sure what the facility is going to be, if it's going to move forward, then it would then wait again till the following year, which would just add just a whole nother year to the dates of everything.
Recording in progress.
I'm assuming that when we apply for this SRF loan type of thing, we need to have a figure in place at that point.
Exactly. You don't have to have a design, but you have to have, we have to be in a pretty good position
to be able to submit
put an estimate.
An accurate, okay.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Just to clarify too, that the August application is really a letter of intent to the state, and doesn't lock you in by putting that August application in. Really what the October loan application the following year is we want this loan at this value, and we've appropriated money to do this work.
All right, thank you.
Changed my mind.
Different kind of question. So if this project gets put in for funding through the SRF program, could we tie into other projects in Lunenburg, say a water main replacement kind of thing? Would that help this get funding for other water mains? I know we did, you guys did submit a letter to funding for water main replacements. Very likely we'll get any funding for it, but if we tied particular troubled water main to this project, first, could we do that? And would it likely?
It would just be submitted as a separate, it could be in the same application, but listed as a separate project.
You could do either. What helps is if you submit it as a single project. Whether you deliver it under multiple contracts is a decision you can make later. But you just need to show how they're connected, to show that there's some sort of linkage there to help, solve this overall arching problem or project. Worst case scenario, what has happened sometimes is when they review your application, they themselves will break it apart for you. So it's your job to show them that these projects are complementary and help solve a problem.
Okay. I'm just looking for ways to get stuff fixed.
An angle to get in there.
That's a good idea.
Just to add to, after the current process, when they released the intended use plan, IUP, in 2023 for the projects that submitted last August, they're also going to take rolling applications for design loans. So that right now those loans are not supposed to be given with principal forgiveness. It's unclear whether they will be, but they will be accepting applications to help assist communities bridging the gap to get to that construction funding. Typically, it had been communities foot the bill for the design, and then the state and federal government provides funding for the construction, but with PFAS, they're also allowing some of the loan program to extend into the design and planning process.
Okay. Any questions?
I don't have anything.
All right, at this point, I'd like to open it up to public comment and questions for Ty and Bond here. I do ask that we keep it specific to this project. The engineers are here, and if there's technical questions you have about this is definitely the time to ask. So if we just, Ms. Pease, if you could, please just state your name and address. And
Joan Pease, 11 Wintergreen Court. I'm here because the Water District most graciously sought community input. The Woodlands is the place where the Water District building is presently located, where the well is located, and where they have an easement for this project. And we do acknowledge their easement and their right to do this, but the Woodlands would like it to go smoothly, and we'd like a partnership to make it as seamless and as few ripples as possible. I gave the Water District some concerns the Woodlands had a month ago or so, and I believe I gave them to the Ty and Bond people here. The most eminent concern we have is during the pilot project, the placement of the trailer, and I believe you said a containment as well?
Yeah, small shipping container.
Okay. The Water District owns quite a bit of property there, and it would be helpful if we could have input into where on that property next to that building would work best for us. We understand you have certain restraints, and we would honor that, but we would like to have input into that. The next concern is traffic. That road down to the water easement area is a dirt road. It is used as a footpath by residents on a regular basis. In the winter, people sled down that hill. Children will get their sleds and sled down that hill. People use that hill to access the lake in the winter with their snowmobiles and with their cross-country skis and their snowshoes. In addition to that, the Woodlands roads were made many years ago in the early 80s, and they were not made to the specification of town roads. There is no through traffic, and they're lane roads. We have partnered with WPI a couple of years ago. The Woodlands partnered with WPI, and we had some engineers come out and survey our roads in anticipation for repaving them, which we do at our expense, the residents' expense. The engineers told us that even the Amazon trucks were too much for our roads, and our roads are falling apart due to Amazon and other delivery trucks. So it is of grave concern to these private citizens who have to pay for these private roads that there will be heavy equipment or frequent truck traffic. So I would wonder if Ty and Bond can address that.
Sure, I mean, again, for this phase of the project, I think as Derek mentioned, the regular trips that we'll be making to the pump station to take samples and monitor, it'd just be somebody from, in a pickup truck or even just a car. We're not bringing in heavy equipment for this other than the initial delivery of the container. But then after that, it would just be regular trucks or cars or SUVs.
Can we request that they drive very slowly? Can you contact Eric from Blue Leaf, and can we request that the visiting trucks drive slowly? It's a very densely populated community with children running around. It used to be all retired people, but now we have many families. Lots of children between 6 and 12. Their parents let them out on the property, and that's a concern. And do you think we could have some input, both the Water District and Ty and Bond, into the placement on your easement? We understand it will be there. We could have some input into the placement, maybe?
Yeah, we just need, it has to be close to the building.
Yes.
So I think kind of what we're thinking is it would just go adjacent to, if you want it on the far end of the building so it's not on the roadside, I think we could probably, make that work. And so there's kind of hidden. I mean, this isn't a full-size what you see like these full-size containers, right, Derek? I mean, it's like a half-size.
It's probably shorter than the stage here.
Yeah.
The 20-footer.
So,
Yeah.
so we'll,
Just enough to, keep the snow off of everything.
yeah. So we're more than happy to work with you on the placement of, but that's kind of what but we'll have to talk, we'll meet on site with Blue Leaf when they're getting ready to mobilize, and we can work with you guys to figure out.
I can give you my phone number if that would help. And the last concern I have is that it's my understanding that the readings of PFAS in the well were higher than the readings of PFAS in the lake. All right, Paul, am I right on that? Yes. And so,
Have you done PFAS sampling?
no, I haven't, but there's a report, help me out here, Paul. It's on the front page of their draft.
Yeah, we did sampling quite some time ago. I was just wondering if you have done sampling.
I've not done any sampling. I'm relying on your data.
Should they do sampling to find out what the PFAS
If
is?
they want.
Okay.
According to our environmental consultant.
You want the Woodlands to do sampling?
No, I'm just curious where the PFAS...
I'm just speaking for the Woodlands here. That's
All right, yeah, I didn't know where you got your lake results. I mean, we
From
did
your
one
data.
test, which we
Yeah.
found out there's lake sample process, and then there's a sample from a well. We did a well sample process from the lake, which we found out was not the accurate way to do that. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with any of that, but there's different ways of testing for PFAS. So that sample, I'm not sure is an accurate sample result for what
Okay.
is in the lake. That's why I was questioning if you guys have actually done sampling yourself.
But
carry on.
my question was going to be about the Woodland Swim Beach. I understand there's going to be some water being discharged back into the lake from this test process. At least that was mentioned at a previous meeting.
The filtered effluent after it's treated.
But when we pumped the well, same as it ran all summer. That well ran for 6 months.
Right, it ran
Up and
up
over
on
the
the
hill.
hill.
It's going to go in the same spot.
Oh, it's going to go to the same spot? And
The
it is-
flow, yes.
And it's not going to be the untreated well water, it will be the treated well water that will be putting back into the lake? Or will some of this be untreated well water? Because the concern is we have a swim beach on that peninsula for the Woodlands children. And if you take the water from the well, which is higher in PFAS, and drain it into the area near the peninsula where the swim beach is, it might make the level go up. I mean, I get questions from the people at the Woodlands. This is a question.
I don't know if you guys want to jump in there, but we're going to pump it up over the hill. You guys saw the hill into the wet area. So it's going to filter into the soil and then eventually get back to the lake. So it's not going to be direct pumped.
It's not going to be right at the swim beach.
Correct. It's going to be on the whole other side, on the other side.
That's very helpful to know. Thank you so much.
Just to clarify too, that the well will be run to waste typical as your current operations, and the pilot system will pull off a garden hose at, say, 10 gallons a minute or so of that pumping to waste. So the well will be pumped at, say, 100 to 200 gallons per minute, and about 10 to 20 gallons per minute of that will be used for the pilot.
Okay. And just if you could have Blue Leaf keep in mind that they're in the middle of a very densely populated residential community, and the traffic is of paramount importance to the Woodlands residents, as are activities down by the shoreline where your water district building is. That causes us no problem at all, obviously. But if they could drive slowly, minimize traffic, and be mindful that it's a residential
We will make sure
community.
they drive slow.
Okay, that's very important. That's the only short-term concerns we have. We share the lake level concern, but I guess we'll be hearing from David down the road on that.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Please. Tell me about this partnership you're talking about.
Well, I thought the water district asked for community representative.
We did, but what are you talking about, a partnership? I mean, what do you want to, as far as what's going to be going on?
Yeah, to make things go smoothly.
I think we've more than done that, haven't we?
Pardon me?
I think we've done that, haven't we?
I think what Ms. Pease is referring to is that we will have a continuing conversation amongst her representative from
Oh, yeah,
Hickory Hills,
I
et cetera.
agree with that.
I'm assuming that's what you're
Yeah.
speaking of, Ms. Pease, correct? Yeah,
Correct.
That's what she's...
All right.
Thank you.
Next.
I assume this microphone's live?
Yes.
I apologize. I'm fighting off a cold, so this is for your sake, not for mine. I had a couple of questions. John Fortune, 50 Hemlock Drive. I'm representing the board of directors at Hickory Hills Landowners. Dave, you said twice in your opening remarks that you were confident that the lake level would not be changed at all from this pumping. What is your data for that? I'm curious, because it's different than the data that we have seen from past hydrogeologists, so I'm curious about that.
I'd be glad to. Can I say, how is it different from the previous, what other studies that you saw that it contradicts
The previous
it?
studies that we have seen show that drawing the well, running it at the 500 gallons a minute, will begin to draw down from the lake. Will begin to draw water from the lake. And actually, the well where it sits, have you seen where the well is, or seen drawings of where it is?
Generally.
So it's 20 feet, 30 feet maybe from the lake. And the hydrogeologist that we've had in the past says that it actually draws water from the lake.
Which hydrogeologist?
The one, the Dufresne.
So you're going by the report that says the 1 foot drawdown? Do you
Well,
have?
my really question was really, it was a statement that you made that you were confident, and that's what I was trying to understand where your data comes from. That's all.
Just because the water comes from the lake doesn't mean that the lake level is going to go down. I mean, that might not sound right, but I can explain that.
Good.
It's not as simple as the lake being a bucket. It's much more complex than that. Water flows in, water flows out, groundwater flows in and out. There's evapotranspiration. And so, just because some of the water from the lake goes into the well, what that will do is, and that's explained in one of those, actually in the appendix to the report that you talked about, the Dunn Geoscience report.
Yep.
That if when you draw water from one side of the lake, say, that will induce groundwater from the other side. And so there's an equilibrium there. And so the water level, just because it's coming into the well, doesn't mean that the water level goes down. And not only just from the science of that, just from experience. There are plenty of lakes where they pump water directly out of the lake. Look at White Pond in Maynard, which doesn't even have an inlet and an outlet. They pumped 1 million gallons a day right out of that pond for, I don't know, 100 years.
But what is the science to explain? Because, I mean, I'm a science teacher, so I could probably stumble through it if you'd be...
Well, I tried to explain how when you induce, groundwater naturally flows from the uplands down in and then it discharges into the lake.
Yep.
And so if you pump out on, say, one side of the lake, that's going to induce more groundwater to balance that on the other side.
What if you're in a drought?
Well, it works the same way.
But there's not an infinite amount of groundwater, right?
Right.
There is some level of groundwater that's there, and what ends up happening is we get to a new equilibrium, whatever that equilibrium is, of the lake. It doesn't just stay at the same level if you're pumping out 700 gallons a minute forever. It changes, right?
Not the surface water level. The changes comes from the groundwater in the uplands, where that's the part, the storage that is lost, not at the lake.
So, okay, so the second question I have then for you is, if we are pumping the water literally 100 feet away, and I don't believe that well where you dump it is 200 feet away, but maybe it is, but whatever, it's 100 feet away, it's 200 feet away, and it runs back into the lake. How will you do the testing to know whether we're changing the water level or not? Because you're literally pumping the 200 gallons a minute that you're talking about taking out of the lake right back into the lake.
Well, the monitoring during the pilot test is the baseline.
Yeah.
And then once we go into operation, that's when we would demonstrate that there's no impact. Because
What does
now it's
operation mean?
When the well goes back on.
back online and it's being pumped into the distribution system.
So we won't know until then.
Yeah, so we wouldn't know from the study then, before the well goes online, whether it really affects the lake level or not.
Yeah, this is the baseline. You won't know until
We're
it goes
just
into
getting a
operation.
baseline, that's it. We're not getting a study on whether it will impact the level in the lake. We're just getting a baseline on what the level is now.
So I'm not sure how that helps us.
That's not really what we asked for.
Dave, is there, or John, is there specific recordings of lake levels? because that well was online for 15 years. We never had one complaint of any until 2010, which is people fed bad information on why the lake was low. I don't know why it was, but it was not because of the well.
But Fran, that's all history, right?
Yeah, it is history, but if you use,
what's happening today.
if you use the data of that, of when the well was online and compare it to the data that was taken from 2010 to what it is now, is there a difference? Do you see more water in the lake now than you did when the well was online? That is the question. And I mean, that well we've pumped.
Not really. I mean, we could change the lake level by changing the height of the boards. So that's not an
if we
accurate
did run the
measure.
well, you could just raise the height of the boards and raise the lake anyway, and compensate for whatever your concerns are. That's what you just said,
No,
correct?
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're trying to go through history, and I'm saying we've been part of the study. We have talked about this specific issue from day one, and we have never made any difference or change or whatever in what we wanted to do, right? We have asked specifically for the water district to pump the water away so we can
2 days
see
before our
during this-
annual meeting, you said
during
that.
this-
Before
during
the
this
special,
study,
2 days
so we would
before.
fully understand it.
Yeah.
That's what we have asked for from day one.
Oh,
So I'm
and that's-
sorry that
that's
this
what we
seems
wanna-
like something new today, but it's
No,
not.
and he wants to do the studies of what the water levels are, and I agree that, I mean, you guys are pushing it to a point, well, I mean, all we can go
Fran,
on is
maybe I
history.
could just
of-
add in quickly, I think what you're looking for, sir, is not, you're looking for a prolonged pump test of the well, which is not included, and this was not what we had discussed leading up to the annual district meeting. It's specifically to do a pilot test and to run the well at a low rate. What you're asking to do is a completely separate exercise, which is a significant cost. If we were to do what you're asking to do, and you want to discharge it outside the basin, we'd have to run a mile of pipe to get it down below the dam to pump it outside the basin. That's a significant cost, and to do a long-term pump test. That was not included in the budget, in the plan that we met with you in the water district several times there over the summer to plan this.
And that was exactly what we asked for. And we asked for that.
I have to
at our last
disagree,
meeting.
because that was not something that if that was something that was supposed to be part of this plan, that we would have had those
Then
discussions
what we were
prior to the
just
district
told,
meeting.
But Dave here was, we're not going to get any idea of the level changes in the lake other than what his theoretical, and I'm not saying you're wrong by any means, sir, I'm not. But I'm just saying, we have theoretical, and we have people that have lived on the lake and seen changes. All we have asked for from day one was to get a good understanding of if you pump the water out of the well, that it doesn't affect the lake level.
Well,
We have been clear on that from day one.
I think that that's been established. I'd like to say that the new source permitting is extremely highly regulated. And it's a very long and detailed process, the DEP, to get the well permitted through DEP. And it went through that process in 85, 90...
94. 94 it was put in.
94.
Yep.
And it was approved. And DEP would never have approved it if they thought that it was going to impact the lake level.
Well,
And if they...
I'm not sure about that. I mean, also DEP approved an area that doesn't have a zone 1. There's no effective zone 1.
Well, they went through the same process. The process in the late 90s is the same process that it has now. And it's not only to evaluate the water quality and the sustainability, but it's to evaluate impacts to habitats and surface water levels for recreation, and as well as other wells and users. And if DEP, part of that is through the pumping test that was done at the time, and from that evidence, if DEP was concerned that it was going to impact the lake level, they would have either conditioned the permit with some kind of management plan for the withdrawal, or they would have conditioned it with some kind of monitoring plan, and they didn't, which demonstrates how confident that they are that it would not impact the lake. It wouldn't have got permitted if, and it's not just the consultants, the DEP has their own scientists that review it.
Okay.
So I think that what you're asking for of evidence and testing, it's been done.
Except the evidence that we have and the testing that we have. Have you read the Dufresne report? It sounds like you have.
Yeah.
And in going through that, it clearly states that running this well, in Appendix H, running the well at 700 gallons per minute over 100 days will bring the lake level down.
Yeah, that's
That's the 100 days, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fran pointed that out to me, and so I
bet he
printed that
did.
out and I read
That
it.
he did.
And that line, it says, this one line where it says, under a worst-case scenario, 100 days of pumping might lower the lake level by 1 foot. And if you take that one sentence,
Yeah?
that is, and say that that's going to be the impact, you're taking it out of context. You got to read the sentence before it and the sentence after it.
And they are?
The sentence before it says, pumpage of 700 gallons per minute represents 0.01 feet of water over the 318 acre surface of the Hickory Lake. So it says represent. So this is not saying this is the impact. That's saying this is how much water it is.
Yep. Okay.
Right? So then it says, say if that's how much water it is, if you pumped it for tenth of a foot over a day, 100 days, that would represent a foot. That's not saying what the impact is, it's saying what it represents. And the next sentence says, in reality, however, as the lake level lowers, the hydraulic gradients toward the lake increase and groundwater flow into the lake increase. So that's how I was explaining before.
Pointed out, yep.
Thus, while the lake levels may lower slightly due to pumping, a new equilibrium will be achieved and the lake levels will not drop continuously.
Thank you. What is the new level of the lake?
The
What's
equilibrium
level?
will occur, it'll be immeasurable.
And that's you sitting here stating.
Well, we're gonna show it with the monitoring. We're gonna get a baseline, and then we're gonna pump for a year, and you won't be able to tell the difference.
But you're gonna pump the water back into the lake, so.
No, that's the baseline. In operation, it goes into the distribution system. So it's,
So after it's back online, after the well is back online.
And they built a
is when
treatment
we will find
building.
out if it affects the lake level.
And they built a treatment building. I have another question. If I understand you correct, Dave,
I'm done. Thank
the
you.
water is going to come in, groundwater from surrounding areas will come in to refill the lake, if I understand you correctly. I'm wondering what that will do to, a lot of our residents have shallow lakes around the well. Shallow wells, rather.
because of
Shallow
all the-
wells.
it can't get
Drinking
any-
water. It won't affect the groundwater there?
No, because it slopes down toward the well. It's not gonna get any lower than where the lake is.
I have to say, I do share John's concern. I understand what you're saying about the groundwater. I get the whole gravity feed, I understand. I moved in 2010, and all of the shallow coves were mud. Whatever the reason was, and I will grant you I don't know all the reasons, whatever the reason was, the well was being pumped that year, and all of the coves, which are only a foot deep, were all mud flats, everywhere around the lake. So you can understand the concern that people who have invested in lakefront property have with this situation.
Absolutely.
And so that makes us a little insecure to say, well, we'll measure a baseline, don't worry, it'll be fine in the long run. That's a hard pill to swallow in that way.
No,
and I know you said you're going to put a baseline thing in the water to measure the baseline during the test, correct? Again, I'm at the Woodlands, we have a swim beach, we have a kayak cove. Could we maybe have input into where on this peninsula you put that into the water, so it's not right where the kids play and stuff?
Sure.
In that regard. I got two hats on, a lake lady and the Woodlands, but I appreciate that.
Mrs. Pease, do you know that there are people down at Hickory Hills? I want you gentlemen to know this too. There are people down at Hickory Hills in the summertime that are still pumping water out of the lake to water their grass.
Not at the Woodlands.
Well, I don't care where it is, it's still a lake. It's coming out of the lake, so that's something you should take into your consideration on your lake level, because they got real green grass down there in the middle of the summer, so they're pumping water out of the lake. And the other thing is, the road that goes down to our property, we have an easement on.
Yes.
All right, I understand what you're saying, but, you know, I used to plow the woodlands. I go down here with dump trucks and a loader and everything. Nobody ever said anything about the road, and I never seen any kids playing outside. Never seen a snowman down there, never seen anything.
It
I don't
used
know
to
where
be,
all these kids are coming from. Where are all these kids coming from?
It used to be mostly retired people,
Yeah.
but in the last few years, it's changed dramatically.
Well, how many children are down there?
Probably a dozen.
A dozen. And they're all going to be playing in the street.
No, well, they sled there in the winter.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the children are in and out of that area. We just
Okay,
look
I'm sure these gentlemen are
slow
professionals.
driving.
This isn't their first job. I'm sure they're going to be aware of the roads, they're going to be aware of the children, they're going to be aware of everything, because this is what they do for a living. This
It
is what
is,
their
it's
job is.
just a densely
So I think a
populated
lot of these
community.
concerns are unfounded. It's just, I mean, we could talk about them forever. We're going to have a policeman down here to direct the traffic or watch the children, or they're going to be responsible. And I think you know that.
I
At
believe,
least if you
I
don't,
believe Ms.
you
Peter's
should know.
comment was just to bear in mind that there are children,
Exactly.
traffic,
Thank you.
sledding, et cetera.
No, I understand that.
Taken,
I
and
understand
we will
that.
definitely push that forward. Looks like we have more public comment. Ms. Bertram?
We're not calling up this person.
Excuse me.
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road. I share the concerns of Mr. Fortune, but I did have a couple questions. You mentioned White Pond in Maynard. Would you tell me what the depth of White Pond is?
I'm not aware of the depth of White.
Okay, I just want to make a comment that the average depth of Hickory Hills is 8 feet. We are a very shallow lake. I have no idea what the depth of White Pond is. However, if they're pumping millions of gallons, I'm sure it's a very different situation. Second question that I have is a comment was made about the well being pumped for 15 years. It was my understanding, and I could be completely wrong, is that the well, because of the iron and manganese, was put into an emergency situation and was pumped, but it was not a regular source of water because of the contaminants. So I would question where we can find the data on how many gallons were pumped from that well, for what period of time, and over what period of time, because that certainly would be helpful data to have.
Yeah, so 2012 is when we took it offline because of the manganese.
Yeah.
It was mandatory, so it was put in inactive state.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was run every month because we had to do water quality sampling on it. Maybe not every month, but most months of every month of the year.
On a
It was-
daily basis?
No,
or on a-
it was very infrequent, but mostly when the well was run frequently, I mean, when the well was first put in, we ran it all the time. We fed the whole town of
And do you know
Lunenburg
what
off that.
period of time, and I'm just trying to understand, because I've heard this comment several times, and I'm really trying to understand, was it really on for 15 years?
Well, I know-
On 500 gallons a minute every day, like we're
Ours
talking
ran
about?
500. We tried different flow rates, but the majority of the time was 500 gallons a minute. I don't remember which year it was, but one year we pumped 70 million gallons out of there. Lunenburg's full rate of right now is about 180 million for a full year.
Okay.
And if you want to go into numbers, 2010, we were told we dropped like 2 to 3 feet. There's 100 million gallons on each foot. We pumped 13 million gallons out in 2010. You guys do the math.
Okay.
You can clearly see we did
And
not
honestly,
affect
John,
that
that's
lake.
what I want to do, is I want to do the math. So if I can get that data.
Okay, so could you confirm that there's over 100 million gallons in a foot of that lake?
No, I'm not, no, I can't.
Because I know a lot of, when we brought it up many times, engineers and
Yeah.
even lake people said, yeah, there's over 100 million
Yeah,
gallons. so-
I can't confirm that.
Okay, so
But-
that's a
but I would
basic
be-
little
But I
math
would be
one.
curious about what the pumping was, because my understanding was prior to 2010, it was used infrequently, because, and, you know, an infrequent use, no, I don't think we would see it, but we're talking about putting this well online. If this goes forward, you're able to remove the contaminants, it will be a primary source. So I think, I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, yeah, so typically the run times were the summer periods, the high demands, because we couldn't keep up with Lancaster Ave. And I believe it's always been clear from all our meetings prior to this, was that we would do policies where we wouldn't run it from through July and August. And we would restrict usage and only run it if we needed to maintain the treatment process, run it once a week. I mean, Hickory Hills currently uses, I think it was 50,000 gallons per day during wintertime, and then we did flow meter readings, and I think it was over 70,000 gallons per day over the summertime. So if we pump that well 70,000 gallons a day, you broke even.
It's taken care of.
It's broke even.
That area.
So
No.
that was our thinking. If we go to the July and August periods where there is the concern, or maybe even do staff gauges or
Yeah.
well, and monitoring, we'd say, okay, the lake's at this level, well's offline. We have no problem doing that. And if we do that, I mean, then we can maintain, if we run the well prior to those periods, the other wells can maintain their levels and stay, full. And then when this period comes, then we can back that one off and just run it for whatever the engineers say we need to run to maintain that treatment process. We want to be cooperative. I mean,
No, and I'm happy to hear that. I know that's something that John and I had talked with the commission about, and what the board at that time was looking for was some sort of agreement, but hesitant to do that, so I think that's a discussion later down the road.
Definitely, when we take up,
But I would really be interested in if there's a way you can provide the gallons per day, or how
I have all that
pumping
information
it was pumped, that would be
Yep,
really helpful.
I have everything from the very first day it was put online.
And the other point I want to make is, I have been in contact with DEP. As you know, I wrote a letter to DEP with outlining the concerns, and the response that I had from DEP is that they will be looking very closely at the pumping rates of this well because of its proximity to the lake. And that they will potentially be looking at an additional environmental study. And that is the email that I received from DEP. So DEP isn't all great. They understand our concerns and are willing to consider those when you go through the permitting process.
On that email, Muriel Stone, one of the head people at DEP, questioned the pump test report. She says, was some specific study done? And I don't know what it was, but she found the report. They keep all this stuff, and she went through this thing. So I think whatever it was that was supposed to be done was done. So they gave them the information that, as Dave mentioned, if we were going to impact the lake, they would limit.
No, she definitely said that the well was approved at that time. She also addressed the concerns about, potential uses in the zone.
Yep.
But she also, at the very end of the email, said that they will be paying very close attention to make sure this does not impact the lake. So I just want to be on record that DEP will be looking closely at this.
Yep, and they usually do. So they did we had to do a pump test after when the thing went back online to monitor stuff. And we would continue monitoring, and that's kind of tied to where I said we'll put the information online, because all our other wells, we trend everything. So I mentioned transducers in the wells, and if we do this permanent, if this thing does happen, we can do actually a permanent installation and monitor the lake levels. So we could do, the well ran 24 hours, and we show the lake level before it ran and the lake level after. We can make that all public information, so you could actually see it.
The difficult thing to hear tonight, and this was absolutely news to me, is as Mr. Fortune thought, I thought that this was going to give us an idea of whether or not putting this well online would impact the lake level. And what I'm hearing is that is not the correct. Until the well goes back online, we won't know. And at that point, the well's back online.
Right.
So that's a tough thing to swallow.
I agree. Yeah, we did talk a lot about the monitoring the wells and stuff. And the engineers agreeing to put those in, but the data that you can receive from that isn't what you guys would like to see, and I understand that.
Hello. She's shorter than me. Carol Hatch, 41 Hilltop Lane. I'm also a Hickory Hills Landowners Corporation board member. Given everything that's been talked about, what I would ask is, at some point, and maybe we need more information until we do this, that we talk about the lake levels and what kind of lake level would be detrimental to us, so that we can engage in a conversation where if it goes down X amount, we agree that, so if we could specifically have something specific on down the road, I think that would be very helpful.
I would 100% agree with that, and I'd push the board to go with that process.
I agree, and it's a conversation I definitely will entertain having, especially once we get going with this, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Awesome, thanks.
Yes,
The
Ms. Fees.
Last question. Thank you, Mr. Woodward. Long-term question, not for the pilot study. The Woodlands has a final concern, should this go through and be approved, that we have a gigantic treatment plant at our waterfront. I'm sure you can understand that that would be something that people would be concerned about. It's not a really great place for a water treatment plant in a densely populated community. I know there's been some talk of locating it at a different site. Is that still something that's being considered?
Well, yeah, we're going to consider everything we can.
So, in this, and this is where I'm trying not to get too much on a tangent on this. I've seen different letters, I've seen emails, and there's a lot of information that gets floated around through this that's not entirely accurate. And it's a little frustrating for me sitting on this end to see this out there that's, when you read it and like, that's not true, that's not what was said. I can assure you and guarantee you this, that it is the goal of the Lunenburg Water Department to get the Hickory Hills well back online. We believe it is the most financially responsible way to ensure that we provide quality water to our customers today and in the future. If this all works out and we get this turned back on, Joan, I will personally make sure that this thing looks as inconspicuous as possible. There's nobody here that is going to vote to make this silo tower sticking 30 feet out of the ground. It's not going to happen on my watch or anybody else's up here. I can assure you that. So I understand your concerns, and you just have to take my word for it. I can't put this in writing because I don't even know exactly what.
And that's a long term. I just bring it up so it's in people's mind. I understand that's not on the table right now. Right now, it's just a pilot study.
Correct.
But I assume that the Water District is anticipating the pilot study to go well. And your engineers have not given you any reason to think that it won't go well.
Correct.
It's a fairly standard treatment process. So you have extremely densely populated community who enjoy the nature and the woods, and, you know, I mean, when the Water District runs their hose, which I think you were referring to before, Mr. Superintendent, my husband gets phone calls constantly. The water's still running, and my husband, Bob Pease, has to call Fran and say, the people are calling me again, the people are, you know, they worry about the trees getting flooded and the dying roots and the, you know.
I understand all those concerns, and all I can tell you from this end is that I assure you that we will do everything in our power to make this as seamless transition as possible. It is our goal to get this back online with appeasing as many people as we can. I don't want to make waves, rifts, upset people, anything like that. You know, it's very important to me personally, along with the people in this water department, to make this something for a benefit for this town.
Can I just talk about when all those calls came in? So we ran the well at very low flows. We were looking, the intent of it was to drop flows enough that we could drop the iron and manganese levels to an acceptable level. That never took place. The levels did drop quite a bit. Typically, we'd see levels of manganese for like 1 part per million to 0.7s. So we dropped the flows, we dropped into the 0.4 range. So it got close to being usable, but it never got there. So during that time, we did the PFAS sampling. Okay, so that's what started the whole thing. And then one of the main things to look at is water under the influence of surface water. So if that well actually directly drew water from the lake, that's terrible. I mean, then we need a treatment plant 3 times bigger than the PFAS. We need a whole new treatment plant and then another treatment plant. So we ran the well at full capacity, 500 gallons a minute, and that's when all the calls came in. So just so everybody's aware, it's a microscopic particulate analysis test. We did that. It's a 24-hour test.
Oh, I wasn't complaining either. I think it's fine, but I just wanted to make the point that that's how concerned people are.
Right.
You know, that they call because my husband is a head trustee at the Woodlands, they call him and.
Well, so just on that note, but we did that test, and I don't even know if the engineers even know this, but it passed. Low, very low. It was like perfect. So there is no direct influence of that lake water on that well. So if it gets filtered and it's good quality water on that side of things.
So I guess, and more to my point, is we're going to sit here and try to do everything to work with you. We would like the reciprocity on it. Also, that you would do everything to work with us on this. Okay?
And that's what I was referring to when I said partnership.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, we want that too.
Sir.
Todd Dwyer, I'm a member of the Lunenburg Select Board, and I just have a couple of questions as a layperson, just to clarify in my mind what's going to happen. Based on this discussion, everybody has more in-depth knowledge of this, so I'm just going to try and fill in the blanks and maybe help some people who watch this meeting, have their understanding increased. So the pilot study, when this is performed, are you going to continuously pump the well during the period of the pilot study?
Yes.
And at what rate will you pump the well?
I believe you guys are talking 200 gallons a minute, similar to what we ran for this past
Okay,
summer.
so 200 gallons a minute. And you had just alluded to that the maximum rate that you draw this well when it's in operation is on the order of 500 gallons.
Correct. That's maximum capacity is 500.
Okay. So, and you referred to the initial, the Dufresne study, I think it was, and they had that statement that, if you pump the well at 700 gallons a minute, that represents, for a day, that represents 1/100th of a foot. So if that lake level drop over 100 days, that represents a foot. You just do the math, 0.01 times 100 is 1 foot. Right. So the question to you would be, is if you pump at 500, does that mean you're going to get 0.007 or 5/7 of that 0.01?
There's too much focus on that depth.
No,
it's not the impact. That's what it represents in a volume, right?
Right.
So
I'm not saying the lake level, but would that represent, in terms of volume that you're pulling out, would you be able to just say, okay?
Proportionally less.
Proportionally less. Okay, thank you. And when you're performing the pilot study, you have referred to several columns, and I'm assuming that you have several columns, meaning several different filter media that you're testing, and you take water quality samples on the influent and effluent through that media for both the filters used for the iron and manganese, and then the effluent for the PFAS filters. Is that correct?
Yeah. When we say pilot columns, we're referring to, say, 6-inch diameter plastic columns filled with different media. We'll have one that's about 5 feet tall for iron treatment.
Yep.
And samples will be taken before and after. There'll be one that'll be for manganese treatment, and that'll be taken before and after. And then we'll have that flow from that system, the iron and manganese treatment system, going to the PFAS treatment system, which will consist of multiple 6-inch pilot columns that are either 5 or, say, 10 feet tall, depending on the media. And samples will be taken influent and then along the bed volume as well, so that the contaminants can be tracked through the media as well as influent and effluent.
Okay. And then the units, I think Fran said it, because you said 0.3 and 0.05, these are all parts per million.
Correct, parts per million, milligrams per liter. And just to clarify for folks out there, when we talk about iron and manganese, we'll use parts per million or milligrams per liter. When we talk about PFAS, we talk about parts per trillion, which are orders of magnitude smaller than parts per million.
All right, are there any other questions from anybody?
I think he's still going.
No.
Oh,
Good,
sorry.
thank you.
Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, no worries.
Question for you, Dave. That column that says a foot loss, 100 days, that's on the assumption there's no recharge from Upper Brook, recharge from the surrounding soils or rain. Is 100 days, as stated in there, is that something has ever taken place, or would it ever take place? Could we go 100 days without a rainstorm, or somehow block off Upper Brook?
0.1 and 1 foot, that does not represent impact. That's just a volume.
Okay.
If it was a bucket, which it isn't. But for your question, 100 days without recharge, I know that the Zone 2 condition is 180 days, and I know that condition has never happened.
Okay. Right, so everybody's aware, we have our zoning maps. So we have our wells, and there's a protective zone. That's all based on the Zone 2 rate, which is 180 days out without rain or any recharge. So that's super conservative on protecting of the well sites. So that's kind of what this is referring to under worst case, which if we went 100 days without rain, we have a lot more concerns than that lake dropping a foot.
I just had one other question. You're jogged my memory. You had talked about pumping the well down. Do you have data that indicates what the drawdown level was in the well? And can you extrapolate from that drawdown level, based on the previous pumping test, what the radius of effect of the groundwater is? So you'd be able to, determine, what radius around that well will affect anyone who would be drawing water within that area?
This is more of a Dave question, but the pump test looked at all that. In the original, back to that 100, a foot in over 100 days, that was based on 700 gallons a minute. The original intent was that, to pump 700 gallons a minute, which is 1 million gallons a day. That was the original intent, and when they went through this and did all their hydrogeologic studies and stuff, they actually determined that 500 gallons per minute was a safer pump rate because of the location of the lake and stuff. So, but we do monitor lake levels. It's called specific capacity. That well had a 40 foot per foot pump rate. So if we pump 500 gallons a minute, what's that come up to? It dropped, it's 13 feet, 12 feet, whatever. So that would be the drawdown inside the well, and then it creates a cone out.
So that cone typically, goes out at an angle of 30 degrees or something? So the radius is actually pretty small around that well? Is that a fair statement?
It depends how you call it pretty small. It's in the pumping test report. I don't recall exactly how far away the cone did extend, but it is in the pumping test report. It's been established. Okay. It's just as a guess, it might be 50, 100 feet. Okay.
Yeah, because there would have been 50-foot observation wells as part of the original pumping test to monitor what that impact on level would be.
It's probably a few hundred feet.
So I'm guessing anything outside of that area won't be affected at all by any pumping of that well. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, any other public comment questions on this topic? Okay.
So we have the next commissioners meeting. What do you guys have for a process plan for?
We're gonna take their report, we're gonna go over it, and then we'll review it, and then we'll make decisions on that.
Okay, so nothing for the next commissioners meeting for the. For the group
all
to
are
get
welcome, but I don't believe so. If there's
Nothing I can come up with.
If there's some concerns, feel free to come.
Mark, are you on? You on Zoom? Mark Bursch is on Zoom. He's in Aruba. I tried to have the meeting there, but.
That would have been nice.
Yeah, we'd ship everybody down there. Yeah.
Bet you would have a lot of public comment then.
So can I?
Hello?
Yeah,
yep, got you, Mark.
So, Matt, I was just curious, is it worthwhile to have the representatives either have a meeting prior to our next meeting, or, you feel we've answered all the questions tonight, that we would move forward at the next meeting?
I feel that we've gotten everything out, but by all means, between now and then, if there is concerns, questions that we have, we can address them. We can,
I just want to make sure that I've given this gentleman, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Tom. Oh, gave me his card, but I've given him contact information from my husband and myself at the Woodlands, and I just would appreciate having a notification when the trailer's coming, and maybe even a day before or sometime before, we'll walk around down there and see where we could put it.
Sure.
Because it would be best if it was done in a way that was the least intrusive.
We'll absolutely do all we can to accommodate you with the
Yeah, we'll work with Blue Leaf. This isn't going to happen obviously for a while, but
correct.
At some point we'll get Blue Leaf up here and we'll reach out to you and we'll have a site visit.
Yes.
And talk about it.
I think, early 2023 would make sense to walk through, and I think in the spring they would mobilize.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be appreciated, and just remind them about the traffic, please.
Sort of true. I think we should be able to press on then. That's fine with you, Mark?
So then the thought is, as an agenda item on our next meeting, would be to final review and move forward with the study.
That's correct.
And then if, obviously if people had questions, they could, like you said, go to our next meeting.
Correct.
Okay. The only other thing is, I appreciate Ms. Pease talking directly with the engineer, but I think that a lot of that communication can go through our office.
I do agree with that, please.
Fran should be coordinating with the trustees at the Woodlands, and that really shouldn't be on our engineers, and our engineers can coordinate with us.
Right.
Call me, Johns, I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll just try to keep the chain of command in the
No
correct
problem.
alignment.
You've got my number, right? You've all got my number?
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll just give them a second to clear out.
See you, Dave.
All right, I guess our next applicant is Mr. O'Brien.
That was not next on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr.
Number 3.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think you know I'm Kevin O'Brien from the Pondview Estates, from Pondview Commons subdivision. I was at your last meeting, and I asked some questions about getting some responses from your attorney. I'd like to just go over the letter that Fran had sent back to the ZBA back on October 6th. It references a couple of things about a letter from September 29th of 2022. Is that the only letter you guys have received from the Zoning Board of Appeals with regards to the, I guess, the issue of...
There has been not much communication to us from the ZBA.
Okay, there are other letters that have been transferred back and forth between the attorneys, which I think would probably help your attorney with making a rational decision. The other lawyers have already done research on it. I certainly think that should be shared with you if I'm being told by the ZBA that I can come here and present to you what I'm thinking of doing, and you don't have all the information. I think that's a little silly. I think you should have that if you're asking your attorney to, comment on what I'm asking you to do.
Okay, I question if we should even be contacting our attorney, because from what I understand, this is all the town's process. So any communication we have with any council should be the town's council. Someone else should be paying for this, not us.
Well,
So
in your letter,
I don't
in your
know.
letter, the last paragraph says that you were going to, you were in the process of reviewing the opinion and waiver request with council. I don't know if that's the town council or your own council. And we'll provide a response at a later date. Again, if you're waiting on the town's council, I'd just as soon know that. If you're waiting on your own council, and your own council hasn't seen any other correspondence that my side of the team has given to the ZBA, I think that's foolish that they shouldn't be sharing that with you. This is the whole, they're worried about the 180-day time frame, and it seems like things just keep stalling. When they ask us to do something, we try and do it, and we're not getting responses back. That's why they sent me to talk to you all and the sewer department, who I met with last night. and talk to them about what I'm doing. I am going to meet with them again in 2 more weeks. I would like to meet with you all again in 2 more weeks before I go to the meeting that night. Hopefully we have something from your attorney, or you have the correspondence back from the ZBA, any more correspondence we've given to them in regards to the water. It's mostly the water we're dealing with, we all know that. And those documents should be in your possession, and quite frankly, you should be able to pass those along to your attorney, my opinion. I may be wrong, but that's on the applicant, and I'm asking for those things to be done. So I will have my lawyer send their attorney a letter tomorrow stating that you should have, if I'm being sent to you, or I'm being sent to any department or any other department to get input, you should have all the information that's necessary for
You guys okay if I talk on this? Sure. As far as the information I have, I go to the meetings that you have, and that's the only place I learn stuff.
Okay.
Other than that, there's pretty much no communication. So I don't...
At the last meeting, we talked about, getting an opinion from your attorney if we could put a tank, a storage tank outside the district. I think you might have told me that was...
We did ask for that information, and we have not heard back.
Okay.
We questioned a couple times, so...
We also talked about if we had if you, me, we all had the right to put a pump station outside the district. I believe at the last meeting you told me that we did. It didn't have to be in the water district, but I just assumed not put you all in a position, but at least have your attorney give their input, the attorneys give their input. And also, I said, as far as I was concerned with dealing with you for the last few years, that you cannot sell water outside the district. But we've talked about putting a meter pit, let's say at the line of the boundary, and me starting my own water company, and you sell to me and I sell to myself. As I've said before, when you sell water, when you guys are in the business of selling water. I know I'm not trying to put you in a position. That's why I'm trying to do this approach before the ZBA gets to it again, that you get your attorneys on board and let's see what they have to say about my requests.
Okay.
Just so I don't want to put you guys in a position. I understand you're a separate entity, but if you read the paperwork or the letters that have been transferred back and forth between the attorneys, the Supreme Judicial Court has already ruled on this, like not this case, but a case like this, that the water district cannot be separated from the rest of the town. It can't be a separate board under the 40B, and I sound like I'm talking like a lawyer, and please don't misunderstand me, I'm not. But under the 40B regulations, it's not, you can't be a separate entity. Every department is under the ZBA. I think your attorney would probably, be very happy to see that, and instead of them trying to create something on their own or doing the research. And quite frankly, you spend a lot of money with them to do that research when it's done. So, still my requests from 2 weeks ago are still the same. But if you haven't got the letters, which you're telling me, I guess you haven't.
We requested, and then we called back and requested again to, told them we had to meet.
No, I'm not talking from your attorney. I'm talking from what my attorney has submitted.
So pretty much the packet at the very beginning, the booklet, that's pretty much all we received for information. And then we did have a call and saying that it was on the agenda. And I asked for a specific so I can be prepared for the meeting, and there was no specifics.
I did reach out to Al, and we've been playing phone tag. I have not been able to speak to him yet, so there is communication. We just had a couple of busy work days.
Well, just in all fairness to you all, that was 2.5 weeks ago, and they're the ones that are pushing. They keep asking their attorney, how much time do we have? How much time do we have? How much time do we have? They've asked that a couple of different times. We're not, from my side of things, I'm the applicant. I'm not trying to hold things up. I come here every 2 weeks to try and help you if you need something, or if there's something I can get from you, from your attorney that might help this along. That's what I'm looking to do. I don't want to be the slowdown. Okay.
All right.
And can I come to your meeting, be on the agenda for 2 weeks? You guys are going to love seeing me.
Okay.
What's that, the 14th? December 14th? Yeah, same night as the ZBA.
Yep.
Yes, which they're requesting.
And I know you weren't at the last meeting, but you've all been invited to come to the next ZBA meeting. Yes.
I've been to them.
Just what you want to do, a 4 o'clock meeting and then go home, or maybe go home and come to a 7 o'clock meeting.
So, we'll have you on our agenda, and then, then we'll come up here for this one.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Review and sign the RFP for the cell tower lease.
Okay, the lease agreement, we did the RFPs months ago.
Yes.
They were the only people that responded. They're already on the tank, so they're just going to continue with the lease. The other one expired. This is a new one. It's been through all the attorneys, both sides back and forth. They nitpicked, it's a full board signature. And maybe we can get, you guys authorize Mark to sign it out of session.
Yep.
You know, if he can agree verbally, then he can sign out of session. But everything that we all had concerns with are in there. $45,000 per year.
Yep.
3% yearly escalator. And then one of the big concerns is that, the tank's gonna need a paint job pretty soon, so we made it part of the contract that they have to remove their equipment to a temporary tower, and they'll do that once every 5-year term. So we have 4 times we could ask them to remove their equipment. So everything's in there, and it's all good.
Perfect.
So you guys should do a motion to sign the agreement, so.
Make a motion to sign the RFP for the T-Mobile lease agreement.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Mark, you online still?
Yep.
You okay with doing the T-Mobile?
Yep.
Okay. So you guys okay with Mark signing that out of session?
Yes. That's
I
fine.
have a full board signature on it.
And we should take less vacations, Birch.
It's okay, Birch.
Sorry, Tom.
I'm envious.
Just bring us next time.
How was the rain today?
Okay, moving on. Review and sign the annual audit contract with Mark Mueller, the CPA.
It's in there.
Oh, sorry.
Oops. We've worked with Mark Mueller for, I'm not sure how many years now, but since I've been here. Since I've been here, he's been doing the annual audit. And
Here we go.
as far as my conversations I had with him, nothing has changed from his contracts that we have done with him in the past, but he did request at least one board member signature and the superintendent's signature. And he is planning on starting, I believe, within the week.
Is this a management signature and governor signature?
I'm the manager, so you can sign the next one.
I'm the governor.
Yeah, the governor. I guess you're the governor.
Good?
Good.
Did we need a motion on that?
It would be good to.
Yeah. All right, I make a motion that we sign the annual contract.
I second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, remotely.
Okay. All right, next one. Discuss the finance charges for a resident on 162 Highland Street.
It's been.
We're all set with that one. We're gonna pass over
It's all
that.
done? Okay. The other one is Commissioner Superintendent additions,
Nothing from me.
and I'm sure there's, do you have any public comment?
One left.
Okay.
Before you do, John, the minutes and everything you signed over, you passed over at the beginning. Did you want to,
We signed the minutes.
but you didn't make a motion to approve them? You passed over that at the
I
beginning.
think he did.
No, I did.
Oh, okay.
I went back and did it before,
Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
apologize.
Thank you, We just did not do the meeting minutes that I was for last week. Those were not done.
Okay, so you passed over the 16th?
Correct. Because that's marking.
Okay.
Yep.
anything else?
Nope.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
To school